She thought someone dropped a ring in her drink by accident. Until she looked closer. Diamond. Platinum. Art Deco filigree. His mother's ring. The one a 17-year-old boy placed in her palm 8 years ago and whispered, "Someday this will be yours." 3 days later, he vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence that nearly destroyed her. Serena spent 8 years rebuilding. 8 years convincing herself she was over him. 8 years creating a life where Dario Venturi was just a painful memory. Then the invitation arrived. Cream paper. Elegant script she'd recognize anywhere. The Venturi family crest pressed into the card like a brand. "Come alone. I've been waiting." She shouldn't have gone. Should have thrown the invitation away. Should have stayed in the safe, ordinary life she'd built. But the handwriting haunted her. And the question that had tormented her for 8 years demanded an answer. Why did he leave? What Serena didn't know was that the answer would force her to choose between the safety she'd built and the love that never died. Now she sits in a private suite above Manhattan, snow falling outside, a ring glinting at the bottom of her glass, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door opens. Dario Venturi steps inside. Taller. Broader. A scar cutting through his eyebrow. The boy she loved replaced by something harder, sharper, infinitely more dangerous. His eyes find hers. And in that moment, 8 years collapse into nothing. Serena. Her name sounds like prayer, like longing, like possession. "I've been waiting for you for years." She can't move, can't breathe, can't process the way he's looking at her, like she's the answer to every question he's been asking. "You left me," she whispers. "You disappeared. You destroyed me." "I know." His voice cracks. "I left to save your life." What happened next changed everything. Hello. If this story touches your heart even a little, go ahead and subscribe. Join our family of hope and love, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's share this journey together. The gallery closing felt like a small mercy after 9 hours of mediating between a temperamental sculptor and a buyer who wanted to feel the emotional resonance before committing to 6 figures. My feet ached in heels I should have abandoned hours ago, my voice worn thin from the careful diplomacy required when art and money collided. The contemporary installation was set to debut in 4 days, and half the pieces were still in crates. I pushed through the revolving door of my apartment building just after 7, the February cold slicing through my wool coat like a blade. My building wasn't much. A converted industrial loft in Brooklyn that real estate agents called artistically authentic, which meant exposed pipes and inconsistent heating. But it was mine. 3 years of working double shifts at 2 galleries, and I had a space with my name on the lease and enough square footage to breathe. The envelope stopped me cold. Cream-colored paper, expensive weight, propped against my door like someone had placed it there with the certainty I'd find it. My pulse kicked up as I scanned the empty hallway. The Edison bulb fixture 3 doors down cast long shadows across brick walls, making the corridor feel narrower than it was. Inside, I locked both deadbolts before examining the envelope properly. No return address. My name written in dark ink across the front. Elegant, deliberate script that sent recognition flickering through my chest like a match struck in darkness. I knew that handwriting. My hands shook as I slid my finger under the sealed flap. Inside, a single card on matching cream stock. The words were handwritten in that same careful script, the one I'd tried to forget for 8 years. Terrazza Stella, Thursday 8 p.m. Come alone. I've been waiting. No signature, no explanation. Just an address on the Upper East Side and a date 2 days from now. And beneath the text, pressed into the cardstock like a brand, The Venturi family crest. The moment I saw that crest, I should have burned the invitation. But the past has a way of pulling you back, especially when it never really let you go. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to call anyone. Maya answered on the first ring, the familiar chaos of her design studio bleeding through the line. Printers humming, assistants shouting about Pantone swatches. "Hold on, I'm drowning in a deadline." The noise cut off abruptly as she stepped into what sounded like a stairwell. "What's wrong? You never call during work hours." "I need you to see something. Can you come over?" 30 minutes later, Maya sat at my kitchen counter, the invitation held between two fingers like it might detonate. Her dark curls were twisted into a paint-stained bandana. Reading glasses perched on her head, eyes sharp with the kind of protective fury only a best friend could summon. "This is insane, Serena. You know who sent this." "I don't know anything," but my voice cracked on the lie. Maya's gaze cut through me. "The Venturi crest is literally embossed on this card. There's only one person who'd send you an invitation with that mark." I paced the narrow space between my couch and the windows overlooking the street. "It's been 8 years. Why now?" "I don't know, and I don't care. You're not going." She set the card down like it had personally offended her. "Dario Venturi destroyed you once. You spent 2 years in therapy trying to piece yourself back together after he disappeared. You don't owe him anything. Not your time, not your presence, definitely not your forgiveness. He didn't just disappear. He vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. One day we were planning our future, and the next..." I stopped, pressing my palms against the cool glass of the window. "I need to know why." "You need closure?" Maya's voice went flat, the tone she used when she thought I was being irrational. "Fine. Text him. Email him. Send a carrier pigeon, but don't walk into whatever this is. Serena, his family is I know what his family is." "Do you?" "Because the last time you knew Dario Venturi, he was a 17-year-old kid playing at being dangerous. Now he runs one of the most powerful crime families in New York. This isn't your high school boyfriend asking for a second chance. This is a man who could make you disappear if he wanted to." I couldn't explain the pull I felt toward that invitation. The handwriting had awakened something I'd buried, a longing mixed with rage, curiosity tangled with fear. For 8 years, I'd built a careful, controlled life. Work at the gallery, weekend brunches with Maya, the occasional date with men who were kind and safe and forgettable. Predictable, manageable, empty. "I'm going," I heard myself say. Maya threw up her hands. "Then I'm going with you." "It says come alone." "I'll wait in the car. Close enough to call the police if you don't walk out in an hour. Far enough that your Mafia ex won't see me." What neither of us knew was that walking into that restaurant would set off a chain of events that couldn't be stopped. And the danger waiting for me wasn't just emotional. It was deadly. We compromised. Maya would stay home, but I'd text her every 15 minutes. If she didn't hear from me by 9:30, she'd call the police with the restaurant's address and a photo of what I was wearing. Thursday arrived wrapped in clouds that threatened snow without delivering. I left work early, claiming a headache that wasn't entirely fabricated. At home, I stood before my closet for 30 minutes, rejecting outfit after outfit. Too formal, too casual, too much like I'd tried too hard, too much like I didn't care. Finally, I chose a burgundy silk blouse Maya had convinced me to buy last year, paired with tailored black pants and heels high enough to project confidence but low enough to run in if necessary. The delicate gold necklace Dario had given me for my 17th birthday, the one I'd never been able to bring myself to throw away, sat in my jewelry box calling to me. I left it there. Small diamond studs instead, hair swept up, exposing the neck he used to kiss. Minimal makeup, professional but not cold, present but not desperate. The first snowflakes began as I stepped outside at 7:15. By the time the car service dropped me at Terrazza Stella's private entrance, The flurries had thickened into a steady fall that blurred the city's sharp edges and muffled sound like the world was holding its breath. The restaurant's exterior was understated power. A brass plaque beside a matte black door. No flashy signage. No velvet ropes. Just old money and older danger whispering their presence to those who knew where to look. I pushed inside, shaking snowflakes from my coat. Warmth enveloped me immediately, along with the scent of truffle oil, aged wine, and something woodsy burning in a distant fireplace. The interior glowed amber, crystal fixtures casting light across dark wood paneling and Italian marble. Fresh white roses overflowed from minimal arrangements, their perfume cutting through the richness of the food. A man in an immaculate charcoal suit materialized beside me. Not young, perhaps 55, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that assessed me with the kind of recognition that made my stomach drop. "Good evening, Miss Hale." His voice was smooth, accented with remnants of Sicily. "We've been expecting you." He knew my name. I hadn't given it. The moment he said my name, I realized this wasn't just a dinner invitation. This was a carefully orchestrated trap, and I'd walked right into it. "This way, please." He led me through the main dining room. Intimate tables, murmured conversations. The quiet wealth of people who didn't need to prove anything, and toward a private hallway I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't being guided to it. My heels clicked against marble, each step echoing my accelerating heartbeat. We stopped at a door of frosted glass etched with Art Deco patterns. "Mr. Venturi will join you shortly." The man opened the door, gesturing me inside. "In the meantime, please make yourself comfortable." The private suite was smaller than I'd expected, but exquisitely appointed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan's glittering sprawl, the falling snow adding a dreamlike quality to the view. A single table set for two, white linens, candlelight, and a bottle of wine already breathing beside two glasses. And on the table, next to my place setting, a small velvet box. My hands trembled as I approached. I didn't touch the box. Instead, I moved to the window, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to steady my breathing. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn. Couldn't, because I'd recognize the weight of his presence anywhere. The way he occupied space, the subtle shift in air pressure that announced him before he spoke. Serena. Just my name. But the way he said it, rough with longing, soft with something that sounded like reverence, made 8 years collapse into nothing. I turned slowly. Dario Venturi stood in the doorway, and he was nothing like the boy I remembered. Taller somehow, though that was impossible. Broader through the shoulders, his frame filling out the sharp lines of a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dark hair still slightly too long, curling at his collar, but now threaded with premature silver at the temples. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. New, adding a hardness to features that had once been beautiful in their youth. But his eyes, dark brown, almost black, framed by lashes that should have softened his face but didn't. Those eyes held the same intensity, the same consuming focus that used to make me feel like the only person in the world. They were fixed on me now with an expression that made my knees weak. "You came," he said quietly, like he hadn't been certain I would. Like my presence was a gift he didn't deserve but had prayed for anyway. "You have 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't walk out of here." My voice was steadier than I felt. Dario took one step into the room. Just one. Giving me space. Respecting the distance I needed, even as everything about his posture screamed that he wanted to close it. "I left to save your life," he said simply. "And I've spent every day since then making sure I could come back to you." The room spun. Or maybe it was just me, my entire world tilting on its axis with 6 words. "What?" "Sit down, Serena. Please." He gestured to the table. "I'll tell you everything. But first, he moved to the table, picked up the velvet box, and held it out to me. This belongs to you. It always has. I didn't take it. What is that? Open it. What was inside that box would rewrite everything I thought I knew about the night Dario disappeared. And the truth was far more dangerous than I could have imagined. With shaking hands, I lifted the small box. Inside, nestled in cream silk, sat a ring I'd seen only twice in my life, once in a photograph of Dario's mother on her wedding day, and once in Dario's palm the night of my 17th birthday, when he'd shown it to me by moonlight and whispered, "Someday, this will be yours. When we're ready. When it's time." A platinum band, Art Deco design, with a center diamond surrounded by intricate filigree that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. "Your mother's ring," I whispered. "The one I promised you." Dario's voice was rough, barely controlled. "The one I've been carrying for 8 years, waiting for the moment I could give it to you properly." I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision. 8 years of anger and grief and unanswered questions threatening to drown me. "You left me," I said, and my voice broke on the words. "You said you loved me. And then you disappeared. You didn't call, didn't write, didn't give me any explanation. Do you know what that did to me?" "Yes." The single word carried so much weight it could have shattered glass. "I know exactly what it did. Because it nearly killed me too." "Then why?" "Because loving you made you a target." Dario's control cracked, emotion bleeding through. "The Kuroda Syndicate found out about you. They were going to use you to destroy my family, to destroy me. I had 2 choices. Stay and watch them hurt you, or leave and make them believe you meant nothing. So I left. I made them think I'd moved on. And I've spent every year since then eliminating every threat, consolidating power, making sure that when I came back to you, no one would ever be able to touch you again." The room was silent except for my ragged breathing and the faint sound of snow against the windows. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that for 8 years I thought you abandoned me, and you were actually protecting me?" "Yes." "And now?" Dario took another step closer, then another, until he was standing right in front of me, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to smell cedar and bergamot and something uniquely him. "Now," he said softly, "the threats are gone. My enemies are dead or exiled. My family's power is absolute. And for the first time since I was 17 years old, I can stand in front of you not as a shadow trying to keep you safe from a distance, but as a man asking you to choose me. To choose us. To choose the future we should have had." He lifted the ring from the box, holding it between us like an offering. "I know I have no right to ask. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fully repair. But Serena," his voice dropped to barely a whisper, "I have loved you every single day for 8 years. You are the reason I survived. The reason I fought. The reason I'm still standing here." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Dario, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to forgive me. You don't even have to stay." He closed my hand around the ring, his fingers warm and solid against mine. "But I need you to know, I never stopped choosing you. And I never will." The weight of the ring in my palm felt like destiny and danger intertwined. I looked up at the man I'd loved, lost, and never stopped longing for, and realized this night wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. And everything that came next would depend on whether I was brave enough to step into the shadows with him, or finally let him go. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The ring sat in my palm like a brand, platinum warm from Dario's touch, the diamond catching candlelight and throwing fractured rainbows across white linen. His mother's ring, the one he'd shown me 8 years ago on a fire escape in Brooklyn. Young and reckless and so certain we had forever. "This will be yours someday," he'd whispered against my hair, and I'd believed him with the kind of faith only 17-year-olds possessed. Absolute, unquestioning, doomed. Now he stood 2 feet away, close enough that I could see the way his jaw tightened with restraint. Far enough that I could pretend the space between us was a choice rather than a chasm. He'd changed. God, he'd changed. The boy who used to steal kisses behind the art building and bring me coffee during late-night study sessions had been replaced by something harder, sharper, dangerous in ways I'd only glimpsed back then. His suit probably cost more than my monthly rent, tailored to emphasize the breadth of shoulders that had filled out with muscle and violence. The scar through his eyebrow was new, a thin white line that spoke of close calls and consequences. But his hands, those I recognized. Long fingers, calloused knuckles, the same hands that used to trace patterns on my skin and hold me like I was something precious. "Say something." Dario's voice was rougher than I remembered, scraped raw by whatever the years had put him through. "Yell at me. Hit me. Tell me to go to hell. Anything but silence. You don't get to ask me for anything." The words came out steady, cold. A small victory considering my hands were shaking. "You left. You disappeared without explanation, without warning, without—" My voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. I waited. Did you know that? I waited for 3 months. Checked my phone every 5 minutes. Showed up at places I knew you'd been. Asked everyone who might have seen you. And nothing. You became a ghost. But what I was about to learn would make me wish ignorance had been the cruelest gift he'd given me. Because the truth was so much worse. "I know." He took half a step forward, caught himself, stopped. The restraint in that aborted movement was almost worse than the distance. "Serena, I know what I did to you. I know I destroyed—" "You don't know anything." Anger felt safer than the grief threatening to split me open. "You don't know what it was like to love someone completely and then have them vanish like you never mattered. Like 3 years together meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. You meant everything." The words came out fierce, almost violent. "You were everything. That's why I had to leave." "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense when staying would have gotten you killed." Dario's control fractured, emotion bleeding through the cracks. "The Kuroda Syndicate found out about you. They had photos, Serena. Photos of you leaving your apartment, walking to work, meeting friends. They knew your schedule, your habits, everything. And they were going to use you to destroy my family, to destroy me." The restaurant felt suddenly airless. "What?" I had 2 choices. His voice dropped, each word precise and deliberate. "Stay with you and watch them hurt you to get to me. Or leave and make them believe you meant nothing. That you were just some girl I'd tired of." So I left. I made it convincing. Made sure they saw me move on, saw me with other people, saw me not give a damn. He paused, jaw working. "It nearly killed me, but it kept you alive." I stared at him, the ring heavy in my palm, 8 years of pain recontextualizing into something I wasn't ready to process. And now? Now they're gone. Dead or exiled or broken. Dario's eyes held mine, dark and consuming. I spent 8 years eliminating every threat, and now I'm here, asking you to hear the truth I couldn't tell you then. The ring felt like both an ending and a beginning, and I had no idea which terrified me more. "Tell me." I set the ring on the table between us, needing the distance, needing my hands free. "Tell me everything, every detail. Every reason, every... My voice fractured. Everything you should have told me 8 years ago. Dario moved to the window, putting space between us like he knew his proximity made thinking impossible. Snow fell heavier now, coating the city in white, muffling the world beyond this room. It started 3 weeks before I left. My father called a family meeting, the kind that meant real danger, not just business. The Kuroda had been quiet for years, letting us operate without interference. Then they made a move on the docks, tried to cut off our shipping routes. I don't care about territory disputes. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. I care about why you left me crying on your doorstep while your brother told me you didn't want to see me. He flinched. Actually flinched. Marco shouldn't have. Your brother did what you told him to. Don't pretend otherwise. I crossed my arms, armor against the way his presence still affected me. Keep going. What Dario was about to reveal would explain everything and make forgiveness nearly impossible. Dario's reflection in the window showed the tension in his shoulders, the rigid way he held himself. The Kuroda don't just attack businesses. They attack families, loved ones, anyone who could be used as leverage. My father's security team found surveillance photos in an intercepted package. Dozens of them. You getting coffee before your morning class, you leaving the gallery, you laughing with Maya outside that Thai restaurant you loved. His voice dropped. You alone in your apartment at night, visible through your bedroom window because you never closed your curtains. Ice slid down my spine. They were watching me. For weeks, maybe longer. He turned to face me, and the anguish in his expression was so raw it hurt to witness. They included a note. Said you were beautiful. Said it would be a shame if something happened to that beautiful face, that beautiful body. Said they'd send pieces of you to my father until he surrendered territory. My stomach lurched. I pressed a hand to the table, steadying myself. You never told me. You never warned me. Warning you meant admitting you were a target. It meant putting you in the middle of a war you didn't sign up for. Dario's hands flexed at his sides, violence barely contained. My father wanted to bring you into protective custody immediately. Surround you with guards, move you to a secure location. But that would have confirmed you mattered. That you were worth protecting. It would have painted an even bigger target on your back. So you just left instead. Bitterness coated every word. Very noble. I made them think you were nothing. The rawness in his voice cut through my anger. I stopped calling, stopped showing up, started being seen with other women. Nothing real, just appearances, but enough that word would spread. I let my family's enemies believe I'd gotten bored, that you were just another girl I'd discarded. It had to be convincing. It had to break your heart because if you still loved me, if you still waited, they'd know it was a lie. Tears burned behind my eyes. I refused to let them fall. It worked. I spent 2 years in therapy trying to understand how someone who said they loved me could disappear like I was disposable. I know. His voice broke. Serena, I know. I watched you. Not like they did. Never like that. But I had someone make sure you were safe. That you got to work okay. That no one bothered you. That you were eating, sleeping, surviving. I saw you cry. Saw you delete my number. Saw you finally start to move on. He took a shaking breath. And it destroyed me. Every single day. But you were alive. That's all that mattered. You should have trusted me. The words came out smaller than I intended. You should have told me the truth and let me decide. You were 19 years old, Serena. You had your whole life ahead of you. College, career, a future that didn't involve looking over your shoulder. I wasn't going to let my family's violence touch you. Not then. Not ever. Dario's eyes held mine, desperate for understanding. I loved you enough to let you hate me if it meant keeping you safe. The ring glinted on the table between us, symbol of a promise broken and somehow, impossibly, kept. If you've ever had to choose between loving someone and protecting them, if you've ever made a sacrifice that destroyed you to save someone else, leave a comment below. This story asks the hardest question. Is love worth the danger it brings? Dario chose Serena's safety over his own happiness. But was he right to make that choice for her? Hit that subscribe button if you're torn between understanding his sacrifice and hating him for the pain he caused. Because what happens next will test whether love can survive 8 years of lies told for all the right reasons. I don't believe you. The words felt necessary even though my heart was already betraying me, already softening toward the truth in his eyes. You're telling me a rival syndicate targeted a teenager because she was dating a Mafia prince? That sounds like something from a movie, not real life. You want proof? Dario pulled out his phone, jaw tight. I have 8 years of documentation. Surveillance photos, threat assessments, reports from the security team that watched you. He swiped through files, each one a window into a nightmare I'd never known existed. Here. This is from the package the Kuroda sent. He held the screen toward me. I didn't want to look. Looked anyway. The photo showed me leaving my old apartment building, the one in Brooklyn I'd lived in during college. I was wearing my favorite green jacket, headphones in, completely unaware. The angle suggested someone in a car, someone who'd waited for me. Someone who knew my schedule well enough to be there when I emerged. The date stamp read, February 14th, Valentine's Day, 3 days before Dario disappeared from my life. There are 47 more. Dario's voice was carefully controlled. Taken over 6 weeks, different locations, different times of day. They knew everything about you. Nausea rolled through me. Why didn't the police? The police don't get involved in our world. Not really. Not in ways that matter. He pocketed the phone. My father handled it quietly, but quietly takes time. And in the meantime, you were exposed. But the surveillance photos were just the beginning. What walked through that door next would prove that the danger had never truly ended. The door opened. I jumped, heart hammering. A man stepped inside. Late 30s, sharp suit, cold eyes that assessed me in one sweep. He carried himself like Dario, with that same dangerous grace. But where Dario held restraint, this man projected controlled menace. Cassian. Dario's posture shifted subtly, becoming more formal. I told you to wait. And I decided Miss Hale deserves to hear this from someone who isn't emotionally compromised. Cassian's voice was smooth, accent tracing back to somewhere Mediterranean. Because you're too close to this, Dario. You always have been. Who are you? I demanded. Cassian Moretto, head of Venturi Security. He moved to the table, extracting a slim folder from inside his jacket. I've been protecting you for 8 years, Miss Hale. You've never seen me, but I've been there. The man who stopped the drunk from following you home 3 years ago? That was my operative. The sudden job opening at the gallery that paid better than your previous position? I arranged that. The apartment building that had surprisingly tight security for your rent bracket? I own it. The room tilted. You've been watching me. Protecting you. Cassian opened the folder, revealing more photos. Different angles, different times. A chronicle of my life I hadn't known was being documented. The Kuroda weren't the only ones interested in you, Miss Hale. After Dario made his exit convincing, other families started sniffing around. The Bratva thought you might know Venturi secrets. The Colombians believed you could be leveraged if Dario's feelings resurfaced. You've been a person of interest to organized crime for nearly a decade. I'm an art gallery professional. My voice sounded hollow. I curate exhibitions. I negotiate with artists. I'm nobody. You're the woman Dario Venturi loved enough to destroy himself over. Cassian's expression softened fractionally. That made you somebody whether you wanted to be or not. Dario hadn't moved from his position by the window, but tension radiated off him. Cassian, that's enough. No. She needs to understand the scope. Cassian turned to me fully. The Kuroda Syndicate isn't theoretical danger, Miss Hale. 3 months after Dario left you, they kidnapped the daughter of a rival family. She was 19, like you. They held her for 6 days. When they finally released her, she was unrecognizable. Physically, psychologically, she never recovered. Horror crawled up my throat. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what Dario saved you from. Cassian's voice was gentle now, almost kind. He didn't leave because he stopped loving you. He left because loving you made you a target he couldn't protect while staying close. Every day he spent away from you was a day he chose your safety over his happiness. The story Cassian told should have made me grateful. Instead, it made me realize how thoroughly my life had been controlled without my knowledge, and how that control was about to tighten even further. I looked at Dario, really looked, and saw the truth etched in every line of his face. The cost of 8 years spent loving someone from a distance, protecting someone who thought he'd abandoned her, carrying the weight of a choice no teenager should have had to make. The Kuroda are gone now, Cassian continued. Eliminated. As are the others who showed interest. Dario made certain of that before he contacted you. How? The question came out as a whisper. Dario's eyes met mine, dark and unflinching. However, I had to. I need air. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against marble. I can't process this right now. I'll take you home. Dario moved toward me, stopped when I stepped back. Or Cassian can. Or I can call you a car. Whatever you need. What I need is for the last 8 years to make sense. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. What I need is to not have been living a lie where I thought I was safe and ordinary while apparently half of organized crime was watching me. You were safe. That's what mattered. Dario's composure was fracturing, emotion bleeding through. Serena, I need you to understand. Everything I did, every choice I made, was about keeping you alive. And what about you? The question surprised even me. What did those 8 years cost you? What Dario showed me next would reveal the physical price of his devotion, and make me question whether love was supposed to leave this many scars. Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor. A glimpse of the boy I'd loved underneath the man he'd become. You want to know what I paid? Fine, I'll show you. He shrugged off his suit jacket, began unbuttoning his shirt. I should have looked away. Couldn't. His chest was broader than I remembered, carved with muscle that came from violence rather than gyms. But it was the scars that stopped my breath. A roadmap of near misses and close calls, white lines crossing his ribs, a puckered circle near his shoulder that looked suspiciously like a bullet wound. This one. He touched the scar on his ribs. Bratva Enforcer, 2 years ago. They wanted information on shipping routes. I gave them nothing. His finger moved to his shoulder. This was the Kuroda's last attempt at retaliation before we eliminated them. They ambushed me outside a meeting. I killed 3 of them before I went down. Horror and something dangerously close to longing warred in my chest. Dario, I'm not showing you this for sympathy. He buttoned his shirt with controlled movements, covering the evidence. I'm showing you because you asked what these years cost. They cost me everything soft, everything good. I became exactly what my father needed, ruthless, efficient, capable of doing whatever was necessary to consolidate power and eliminate threats. He paused. But I never became heartless, because the whole time I was doing it for you. That's not fair. Tears finally spilled over. You don't get to put that on me. You don't get to make me responsible for... I'm not. Dario closed the distance between us, slow enough that I could move away if I wanted. I didn't move. I'm telling you that having something to protect gave me purpose. Knowing you were out there, living the life you deserved, kept me human when everything else tried to make me a monster. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could smell cedar and bergamot, could feel the heat radiating off his body, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Close enough to be dangerous. I built an empire. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Expanded territory. Eliminated rivals. Made the Venturi name mean something again. And I did it alone, Serena. No one close. No one trusted. No one who could be used against me the way they tried to use you. He lifted his hand, stopped just before touching my face. I've been alone for 8 years, surrounded by soldiers and associates and people who fear me, but completely alone. Because the only person I wanted beside me was you. You could have come back sooner. My voice shook. Once the threats were gone, there were always new threats, the nature of this life. Dario's hand finally made contact, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. But 6 months ago, the last piece fell into place. The last enemy was eliminated. And I realized I'd spent so long protecting you from a distance that I'd forgotten how to close it. I was terrified you'd moved on completely, that you'd built a life that didn't have room for me. I tried to move on. The admission hurt. I dated, tried to feel for someone else what I felt for you. It never worked. Good. The possessiveness in that single word should have scared me. Instead, it sent heat curling through my stomach. Because I never tried. Never looked at anyone else. Never wanted to. You were it for me at 17, Serena. And you're still it now. His thumb brushed away my tears, the touch achingly familiar despite the years. And for the first time since I'd walked into this restaurant, I let myself consider the impossible. That maybe the boy who'd broken my heart had grown into a man who'd spent 8 years putting it back together from afar. I should hate you. The words came out without heat, more observation than accusation. Everything logical says I should walk out of here and never look back. You should. Dario's thumb continued its gentle path along my cheekbone. I wouldn't blame you. 8 years is a long time to hurt someone and expect forgiveness. Then why are you still touching me? My breath hitched as his hand slid into my hair, fingers tangling in the carefully arranged style, destroying it. Why am I letting you? Because you feel it too. His voice dropped lower, rough with want. Whatever this is, whatever it's always been, it didn't die just because we spent 8 years apart. If anything, it got stronger. But giving in to this attraction would mean crossing a line I couldn't uncross. And the decision I was about to make would seal both our fates. He was right. God help me, he was right. Being this close to him felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. Terrifying and inevitable, and somehow exactly right. This is a terrible idea. Probably. His forehead touched mine, breath mingling. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this. I'll leave right now and never contact you again. I should have told him to stop, should have stepped back, grabbed my coat, walked out before I did something irreversible. Instead, I fisted my hands in his shirt and pulled him closer. I hate that I missed you. I hate that part of me never stopped loving you. I hate that standing here with you feels more real than the last 8 years combined. Serena, my name came out as prayer and plea. Shut up. I kissed him before I could change my mind, before logic could override the longing that had been eating me alive since he'd walked into this room. His response was immediate and consuming, one hand cupping the back of my head while the other wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him. This wasn't the tentative kissing of teenagers figuring things out. This was years of deprivation and desire compressed into a single moment, desperate and demanding, and dangerously close to spiraling out of control. He tasted like whiskey and memory, like every night I'd spent wondering what happened to us, like the future I'd thought I'd lost. I kissed him harder, trying to communicate everything I couldn't say. The anger and the longing, the fear and the hope. The part of me that had never stopped being his, no matter how hard I'd tried to convince myself otherwise. Dario broke away first, breathing hard, eyes dark with want. We need to stop. Why? I was already reaching for him again. Because if we don't stop now, I won't be able to. His control was barely held, evident in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands flexed on my waist like he was fighting the urge to pull me closer. And you deserve better than being something I couldn't resist in a moment of weakness. You deserve a clear choice, made without this. He gestured between us, clouding your judgment. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Anger flared, hot and clarifying. You already made that choice 8 years ago without consulting me. Don't do it again. You're right. He released me, stepped back, the distance feeling like punishment. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. We stood there, breathing hard, the air between us charged with everything we'd left unsaid. Finally, I grabbed my coat from where it hung by the door. I need time. I need to think without you standing here looking at me like that. Like what? Like you'd burn the world down if I asked. I pulled on the coat with shaking hands. It's too much, Dario. All of it. The truth about why you left. The danger I never knew about. The way you're looking at me now like I'm the only thing that matters. It's too much, too fast. How much time do you need? I don't know. I moved toward the door. Maybe a few days, maybe longer. I need to process this without... But the past wasn't done with us yet. And the danger I thought was buried was about to explode back into our lives. The door burst open before I could finish. Cassian stood there, phone in hand, expression grim. We have a problem. Dario's entire demeanor shifted, becoming harder, colder. What kind of problem? Vincenzo Arcuri was spotted at the Carlisle Hotel an hour ago. He knows she's here. Cassian's eyes flicked to me. And he's not alone. Who's Vincenzo Arcuri? I looked between them, alarms spiking. Why does it matter if he knows I'm here? He was my father's consigliere. Dario was already pulling out his phone, sending rapid-fire texts. Until he decided the Kuroda offered better terms and helped orchestrate the plot against you 8 years ago. We thought he'd fled to Eastern Europe. Thought wrong. Cassian moved to the window, scanning the street below. 3 SUVs just pulled up. Professional operation. They're not here for dinner. Dario's hand found my arm, grip firm but not painful. We're leaving. Now. Wait, what? I pulled back instinctively. I'm not going anywhere with you. I just said I needed time. Time's up. His voice carried command that probably made grown men obey without question. Vincenzo doesn't know the threats against you are why I left. He thinks you're leverage that was never properly exploited. And now that I've brought you back into my world publicly, you're a target again. Then I'll go home. Call the police. Hide. My voice pitched higher. I don't need your protection. The police can't help you against people like this. Cassian was already moving us toward a back exit I hadn't noticed. And home is the first place they'll look. Dario's right. You need to disappear until we handle this. Handle this how? I dug in my heels. By killing them? By starting a war? I don't want blood on my hands because of me. But what I wanted didn't matter anymore. The choice had been made the moment I walked through that restaurant door, and now I'd have to live with the consequences. Dario stopped, turned, cupped my face with both hands. Listen to me. I have spent 8 years making sure you stayed safe and separate from this life. But Vincenzo showing up tonight, specifically tonight, means someone told him I contacted you. Someone knew you'd be here. And that means the danger isn't theoretical anymore. It's standing right outside. Fear crystallized into something cold and sharp. What do you need me to do? Trust me. His eyes held mine, desperate and determined. One more time. Trust me to keep you safe. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could handle this myself. But the memory of those surveillance photos, the story of the girl who'd been kidnapped and destroyed, kept the protest locked in my throat. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't reach you. Dario led me through a service corridor, Cassian flanking our other side. The estate in Westchester. Full security, controlled access, defensible position. You mean a fortress? The reality of what I was agreeing to settled like lead in my stomach. You mean I'll be a prisoner? You'll be alive. His hand tightened on mine. Everything else we can negotiate. We emerged into an underground parking garage. A black SUV waited, engine running, driver alert behind tinted windows. Cassian opened the back door, gesturing me inside. 2 minutes behind us. Another team will create a diversion at the front. I climbed in, Dario sliding beside me, Cassian taking the front passenger seat. The driver pulled out smoothly, no squealing tires or dramatic acceleration, just professional efficiency that suggested this wasn't his first extraction. My phone buzzed. Maya. I started to answer. Don't. Dario's hand covered mine. They could be tracking your phone. Anyone you call right now becomes a target. Maya's not involved in this. She is now, because they'll use her to find you. He gently extracted my phone. I'll have someone contact her. Tell her you're safe, but need to be away for a few days. But you can't call her directly. Not until this is resolved. The SUV merged onto the highway, the city falling away behind us. I watched the lights blur, feeling like I was leaving my entire life behind. How long? Until we locate Vincenzo and eliminate the threat. Dario's jaw was tight. Days at minimum, possibly weeks. I have a job, an exhibition opening in 4 days. A life that doesn't just pause because your life pauses or it ends. The bluntness was brutal but not cruel. I'm sorry, Serena. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but keeping you alive means keeping you hidden until we're certain it's safe. I leaned my head against the window. Exhaustion and fear and too many emotions warring for dominance. 8 years ago, you left to protect me from this. And now, 8 years later, I'm right back in the middle of it. How is this any different? Because 8 years ago, I had to face it alone. Dario's hand found mine in the darkness, fingers intertwining. This time, I'm not letting you go. This time, we fight through it together. But together would mean surrendering the freedom I'd spent 8 years rebuilding. And I was about to discover that Dario's protection came with a price I wasn't sure I could pay. The estate emerged from darkness like something from a Gothic novel. Stone walls, iron gates, security lights creating harsh shadows across manicured grounds. We pulled through after Cassian entered a code, the gates closing behind us with mechanical finality. Welcome to the Venturi compound. Dario's voice held bitter irony. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. I stared at the mansion looming ahead, understanding with perfect clarity that whatever choice I'd thought I was making back in that restaurant, it had already been made for me. The danger I'd never known existed had found me anyway. And the man who'd once left to save me was now the only thing standing between me and a threat that wanted to destroy us both. 3 days of luxury imprisonment had frayed my nerves to breaking. The estate was beautiful, I'd give it that. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking grounds that probably required a dozen gardeners. Rooms filled with art that would make my gallery directors weep with envy. A library that rivaled small universities. And I hated every inch of it. Because beautiful or not, I couldn't leave. Security patrolled the perimeter. Cassian monitored every entrance. And Dario watched me like I might disappear if he blinked, his presence both comforting and suffocating. I need to get out of here. I found him in his study the morning of day 4, papers spread across an antique desk, looking exhausted. Even for an hour, I'm going insane. He looked up, dark circles under his eyes, evidence he'd been sleeping as poorly as I had. It's not safe yet. Vincenzo is still... I don't care. The words came out sharper than intended. You can send a dozen guards. We can take an armored car. I don't care. But I need air and space and to feel like a person instead of a possession you're keeping safe. Something flashed across his expression. Hurt, maybe, or recognition that I was reaching a breaking point. Okay. Where do you want to go? The pier. The one in Red Hook where we used to go. The words surprised even me, but once spoken, I knew they were right. I want to go back to where this started. Serena, his voice held warning and longing in equal measure. You said we'd face this together. That means I get a say. I crossed my arms. Take me to the pier or I swear I'll walk out that front door and risk it myself. What I didn't realize was that going back to where we began would force me to decide. Did I want the future Dario was offering, or the freedom I'd fought so hard to claim? 30 minutes later, we pulled up to the waterfront. The old industrial pier had been partially renovated since I'd last been here. Some of the warehouses converted to trendy restaurants. The boardwalk rebuilt. But the section where we used to sneak in remained unchanged. Cassian stayed with the car while Dario led me through a gap in the fence. The metal cold under my fingers, frost crunching beneath our feet. The pier stretched out over dark water, Manhattan's skyline glittering across the river. Wind bit through my coat, but I didn't care. This place held ghosts of who we'd been. 2 teenagers who'd thought love could conquer anything, who'd stayed up until dawn talking about futures that seemed inevitable. We used to come here every Friday night. I moved to the railing, the wood worn smooth by years of weather and hands. You'd bring terrible pizza from that place by your school, and we'd sit right here and pretend we had everything figured out. Dario stood beside me, close but not touching. I proposed to you here. Sort of, the first time. I laughed despite everything. You were 17. You said I'm gonna marry you someday, like it was already decided. It was decided. For me, at least. His profile was sharp against the city lights. I knew at 15, Serena. The first time I saw you in that art class, arguing with the teacher about whether photography counted as fine art. You were so passionate, so sure of yourself. And I thought, that's it. That's the person I want to spend my life with. We were children. But my voice held no conviction. Maybe. He finally looked at me. But that doesn't mean what I felt wasn't real. Doesn't mean it wasn't the most real thing I've ever experienced. Why did you bring me here? I whispered. Really? Because you're right. You deserve to understand everything. Not just the danger. Not just the sacrifice, all of it. Dario turned fully, the pier lights casting shadows across his scarred face. I didn't just leave to protect you. I left because staying meant pulling you into a life I knew you didn't want. You had dreams, Serena. College, career, a normal existence. And being with me meant abandoning all of that. You didn't give me the choice. No, I didn't. His honesty was brutal. Because I knew what you'd say. You'd have chosen me over your dreams. You'd have said you wanted to stay, that we could make it work. And I'd have let you, because I was selfish enough to want you more than I wanted what was best for you. Tears froze on my cheeks. So you made the choice for me. Yes, and I'd do it again, even knowing how much it would hurt us both, because you got to be everything you wanted to be. You built a career you love. You have friends, independence, a life that's yours. His voice cracked. You became exactly who you were meant to become. And if staying with me meant you'd have lost that, then leaving was worth every second of agony. But now he was asking me to risk everything I'd become for the love we'd lost. And the proposal he was about to make would force me to choose between two versions of myself. The woman I'd fought to be, and the girl who'd never stopped loving him. I wanted to hit him, wanted to kiss him, wanted to scream and cry and demand to know why love had to be so complicated. I hate that you're right. I hate that part of me understands. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Dario reached into his coat, pulled out the ring, his mother's ring, the one I'd left on the restaurant table. But I'm asking you to consider something. The girl I loved at 17 deserved to chase her dreams without a Mafia boyfriend weighing her down. But the woman you've become? She's strong enough to choose this life with full knowledge of what it costs. She's powerful enough to stand beside me, not behind me. She's everything I dreamed she'd become. He held the ring between us, not offering, just presenting. So I'm asking, not the girl who loved me blindly, the woman who knows exactly who I am and what I'm offering. Serena Hale, will you marry me? Will you choose this life, these complications, this danger, and me, with your eyes wide open? The city glittered behind him. The river whispered beneath the pier. And everything I'd spent 8 years believing shattered like glass. Reforming into a truth I'd been running from since the moment he'd walked back into my life. I'd never stopped loving him, never stopped being his. The only question was whether I was brave enough to admit it. Here's the impossible choice. Love someone and risk everything, or stay safe and live half a life. Serena spent 8 years building independence, freedom, a career she earned through sacrifice. Now Dario's asking her to step into a world where loving him could cost her everything, including herself. If you've ever had to choose between the person you love and the life you've built, drop a comment. This is the moment where fairy tales end and real life begins. Messy, dangerous, and asking you to be brave enough to choose the hard thing. Subscribe if you believe some loves are worth the risk, even when the cost is almost too high to pay. Because Serena's answer will determine not just her future, but whether love can survive in a world built on violence and control. You're asking me to marry you while there's an active threat against my life. I stared at the ring, then at him. That's either incredibly romantic or completely insane. Can't it be both? Dario's attempt at lightness didn't quite mask the vulnerability underneath. I've waited 8 years. I'm not waiting another day to be clear about my intentions. Your intentions. I laughed, but it came out broken. You've always been clear about that. Even when you left, even when I thought you'd abandon me, you never stopped making choices based on what you thought was best for me. And now I'm asking you to choose for yourself. He was still on one knee, the position vulnerable and commanding simultaneously. No more decisions made for you. No more protection you didn't ask for. Just an honest question. Do you want this? Do you want me? Not the boy you loved before, but the man I've become? The answer I was about to give would seal both our fates. There would be no going back, no second chances, just the terrifying leap into a future neither of us could predict. I looked at him, really looked, at the scars and the sharp edges, the controlled violence and the desperate devotion. This wasn't the gentle boy who'd brought me coffee and walked me home. This was a man who'd killed to keep me safe, who'd built an empire with bloodied hands, who'd spent 8 years becoming exactly what he needed to be to protect what he loved. And I wanted him anyway. God help me. I wanted him maybe more now than I had at 17, because now I understood what love actually cost. Not the easy promises of teenagers, but the hard choices of people who'd survived enough loss to know what they were choosing. I'm terrified. The admission felt like freedom. I'm terrified of this life, of the danger, of losing myself in your world. I'm terrified that choosing you means giving up pieces of me I've fought to build. Then don't give them up. Dario's voice was rough with emotion. Keep your career, keep your friends, keep every part of yourself that makes you who you are. I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to let me stand beside the person you already are. Even if that person wants to stay involved in the art world? Even if she wants to maintain her own identity separate from being a Mafia wife? I needed to hear him say it. Especially then. He stood, the ring still between us. I don't want a decorative accessory, Serena. I want a partner. Someone who challenges me, who maintains her own life, who reminds me there's more to existence than power and territory. I want you, exactly as you are. This is insane. But I was already reaching for the ring, already knowing what my answer would be despite every logical reason to say no. We've spent 3 days together after 8 years apart. We barely know each other anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. Dario slid the ring onto my finger. The fit perfect because he'd always known my size, had probably carried this ring for years waiting for this moment. We'll date, have arguments, learn each other again, but we'll do it engaged, committed, with the understanding that this time, I'm never leaving. The ring caught the city lights, throwing fractured rainbows across our joined hands. His mother's ring, the one he'd sworn at 17 would only go to the woman he'd marry. And now, after 8 years and more pain than either of us should have survived, it was finally where it belonged. Yes. The word came out steadier than I felt. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll choose this complicated, dangerous, absolutely insane life with you. Dario's control shattered. He kissed me like he'd been drowning and I was air, like 8 years of deprivation had finally ended, like I was the answer to every question he'd been asking. I kissed him back with equal fervor, tasting salt from tears I didn't remember crying, feeling the way his hands shook as they cupped my face. I love you. He said it against my lips, between kisses. I've loved you since we were 15. I loved you when I left. I loved you every day we were apart. And I'll love you until the day I die. I know. And I did. Finally understood that every choice he'd made, every hurt he'd inflicted had been love wearing the disguise of protection. I love you too. Even when I hated you. Even when I tried not to. I never stopped. We stood on that pier until the cold became unbearable, holding each other like we could make up for 8 years of absence in a single embrace. Eventually, Cassian's discreet cough interrupted us. Hate to break this up, but we should move. The longer we stay in one location. I know. Dario pulled back reluctantly. Let's go home. Home. The words settled into place. Not my apartment in Brooklyn, not even the estate in Westchester. Home was wherever he was. Terrifying and true in equal measure. But saying yes to Dario meant saying yes to everything that came with him, including the violence that was about to explode back into our lives. The drive back felt different. The weight of the ring on my finger, the certainty of the choice I'd made, changed the landscape. I was engaged to a mafia boss. I'd chosen danger over safety. And instead of the fear I'd expected, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Like I'd finally stopped fighting against the current and let it carry me where I was always meant to go. The estate transformed overnight. Staff I'd barely seen emerged to prepare, the household mobilizing with military efficiency. Apparently, announcing a Venturi engagement required more than a simple celebration. It required a statement. A declaration to every family, every rival, every potential threat that I was under protection now. That touching me meant war. This is too much. I stood in the ballroom 2 days later, watching as florists arranged elaborate displays, as caterers set up stations with food I couldn't pronounce. I thought we were just doing something small. Small isn't an option. Dario appeared behind me, hands settling on my waist. This isn't just about us. It's about making sure everyone understands the Venturi family stands united. That you're not leverage, you're family. So I'm a political statement. You're my future wife. He turned me to face him. The politics are secondary. But yes, marrying you sends a message. That I'm not afraid to love openly. That I'm strong enough to protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it sent heat curling through my stomach. When did I become yours? 8 years ago on a pier, when you said you'd love me forever. His smile was small and devastating. I've just been waiting for you to remember. But the celebration we were planning would also serve as bait, drawing out every enemy who thought they could use me against him. And the real test of our engagement was about to begin. The guests arrived at 7. I'd expected suits and cold faces, men who dealt in violence and territory. And there were those, Cassian and his security team, various captains and enforcers whose names I struggled to remember. But there were also families, women who embraced me warmly, who offered congratulations that seemed genuine, children who ran through the halls despite their parents' protests. Even Maya, who Dario had insisted on inviting despite the risk. You're insane. She hugged me tightly, careful of the emerald green silk dress I'd chosen. But if you're happy, I'm happy. Even if your fiancé scares me to death. He should. I grinned. It means his reputation is working. Dario's family was smaller than I'd expected. His father had passed 2 years ago, leaving him as the head of the family. His brother Marco, who I remembered as the one who'd lied to me years ago, approached cautiously. I owe you an apology. He didn't quite meet my eyes. What I did, telling you Dario didn't want to see you. I was following orders, but that doesn't make it right. You were protecting your brother. I found I meant it. I understand that now. The evening unfolded like something from a movie. Toasts were made, Cassian giving a surprisingly touching speech about Dario's dedication. Food was served, wine flowed, and gradually I relaxed into the surreal reality of being celebrated as the future Mrs. Venturi. You're handling this better than I expected. Dario found me near midnight, the party still going strong around us. Most people find their first mob gathering overwhelming. Most people didn't spend their teenage years dating a future mafia boss. I leaned into him, exhaustion and champagne making me bold. Besides, it's not that different from gallery openings. Same political maneuvering, just higher stakes. He laughed, the sound rare and genuine. I like that. You seeing the similarities? Speaking of galleries, I'd been waiting for the right moment. I talked to my director, explained I'd be taking a sabbatical for a few months while we figure out security. But after that, I want to go back. Part-time, maybe. But I'm not giving up my career. I wouldn't ask you to. Dario's arms tightened around me. Though we'll need to discuss security protocols. and possibly having a team shadow you. I can live with that. I realized. Could adapt to this life if it meant keeping both the career I'd built and the man I'd never stopped loving. As long as you understand, I'm not just going to stay home and be decorative. Serena, you could never be just decorative. You're too stubborn for that. He kissed the top of my head. We'll figure out how to balance both worlds, your art and my business. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. The party wound down in the early hours. Guests departed with final congratulations, the security team doing final sweeps, the household settling into quiet. I stood at the window of Dario's room, our room now, I supposed, watching the grounds. Having second thoughts? He joined me, having shed his jacket and tie, looking more like the boy I remembered. No, just thinking how different this is from what I'd imagined at 17. I touched the ring on my finger. I thought we'd have a simple life. Apartment in Brooklyn, maybe. Jobs we loved. Kids eventually. Normal. And now? Now I'm engaged to a man who has to have armed guards at his engagement party, who runs an empire built on violence and loyalty, whose enemies could target me just for existing. I turned to face him. It's not what I imagined, but somehow it's exactly what I want. Even knowing it won't be easy? His vulnerability showed through again, the fear that I might regret this choice. Especially knowing that. I pulled him closer. Easy isn't what makes something worth having. You taught me that. Spending 8 years becoming someone strong enough to choose this. That's what makes it right. We stood together as dawn began to break, the estate peaceful around us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Vincenzo was still out there. Threats still existed. The complicated balance of our two worlds still needed navigating. But tonight, wearing his ring, surrounded by the family I'd chosen and the man who'd never stopped choosing me, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years. Complete. Vincenzo's been located. Cassian's voice was grim as he briefed us over breakfast 3 days after the engagement party. Eastern edge of the territory. He's been gathering support from smaller families, trying to build opposition against the Venturi consolidation. I set down my coffee, reality crashing back. For 3 days, we'd existed in a bubble, planning an actual wedding, discussing security measures for my eventual return to work, learning to exist as an engaged couple after 8 years apart. But the threat hadn't disappeared just because we'd chosen each other. The peace we'd been living in was about to shatter. And what Dario did next would show me exactly what kind of man I'd agreed to marry. What's the play? Dario's voice had shifted into what I'd started recognizing as his business tone. Controlled, strategic, devoid of emotion. We've got eyes on his location, can move within the hour. Cassian glanced at me. Unless you'd prefer Miss Hale didn't hear the operational details. She's family now. Dario's hand found mine under the table. She hears everything that affects our safety. The casualness with which they discussed violence should have disturbed me. Maybe it would have, before. But after seeing the surveillance photos, after understanding what men like Vincenzo were capable of, I found myself numb to the moral implications. This wasn't a world where calling the police solved problems. This was survival, pure and simple. How long will you be gone? I tried to keep my voice steady. As long as it takes. Dario turned to me. I need you to stay here with the secondary security team. Cassian's already briefed them. I know the protocol. I'd learned it over the past week. Stay inside, away from windows. Trust the security team. Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. Wait for the all clear. Just be careful. Something softened in his expression. I will. This isn't my first operation. It's my first time being the person waiting for you to come home. The admission felt too vulnerable, but I couldn't help it. So humor me. He kissed me, slow and thorough, like he was memorizing the taste. I'll come back, I promise. But promises made in this world had a way of breaking. And the hours I was about to spend waiting would teach me what it really meant to love a man who lived by violence. They left within the hour. Dario, Cassian, and a team of men I'd come to recognize as the inner circle. The estate felt cavernous without him. Too quiet, every creak and shadow suddenly ominous. I tried to work, reviewing proposals my gallery had sent over, but couldn't focus. Tried to read, but the words blurred. Finally, I called Maya. He's out handling the threat. I didn't elaborate. Maya knew enough not to ask details. I'm just sitting here trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. He's survived this long without you. Maya's voice was practical, comforting. He'll survive now. Men like Dario, they're too stubborn to die young. I hate this part of it. I moved away from the window where I'd been watching the gates. The waiting. The not knowing. Then don't wait passively. Do something. Plan your wedding. Design the dress. Pick flowers. Give yourself something to control since you can't control this. She was right. I spent the next hours doing exactly that. Pulling up Pinterest boards, sketching dress ideas, making lists of venues that could accommodate the kind of security a Venturi wedding would require. By the time the sun set, I had the beginnings of a plan. Small ceremony, only closest family and friends. Reception at the estate where security was absolute. Colors, deep burgundy and gold, sophisticated and warm. My phone rang at 9. Dario's number. It's done. His voice was tired but alive. Wonderfully. Perfectly alive. Vincenzo won't be a problem anymore. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. When will you be home? An hour? Maybe less. A pause. I love you. I love you too. Drive safe. He arrived 45 minutes later, looking exhausted and beautiful and whole. I met him at the door, not caring about the protocol of waiting inside, needing to see with my own eyes that he was unharmed. It's over? I searched his face for injury. It's over. Dario pulled me close, the hug speaking of relief and homecoming. All threats neutralized, all loose ends tied up. You're safe now, Serena. Really safe. We're safe, I corrected. Both of us. Both of us. He kissed the top of my head. Sorry. Still getting used to the us part. We stood in the doorway, Cassian and the security team discreetly moving past us into the house. 8 years ago, loving each other had meant danger and sacrifice. Now it meant partnership and protection. Not because the world had changed, but because we had, becoming strong enough, ruthless enough, committed enough to fight for what we wanted. I started planning the wedding. I led him inside toward the study where I'd spread out my notes. Nothing's set in stone, but I have ideas if you want to. Show me everything. He settled onto the couch, pulling me down beside him. I want to hear every detail, every color choice, every decision. And in that moment, planning our future over wedding colors and venue choices, I realized something profound. I'd finally stopped running from the past and started building towards something real. We spent the next hour going through plans, debating venues and guest lists and timing. It felt remarkably normal, just two people planning their future, arguing about whether orchids or roses were more elegant, whether we needed a full band or a DJ would suffice. Like we were any other couple, rather than a mafia boss and the woman he'd spent 8 years protecting from the shadows. Spring, I decided finally. April, maybe. After the gallery's spring exhibition closes, but before the summer shows begin. April works. Dario pulled me closer, exhaustion clear in the lines around his eyes. Gives us time to do it right, to build the life we want. What kind of life do you want? I'd been afraid to ask before. Besides the obvious. He considered, fingers tracing absent patterns on my arm. One where I come home to you every night. Where we argue about stupid things like whose turn it is to pick the movie. Where we build something that's ours. Not my father's legacy, not the empire I inherited, but something we create together. He paused. Kids, eventually, if you want them. A future that looks nothing like my past. I want that too. The certainty surprised me with its clarity. All of it. Even the parts that scare me. The parts that scare you are usually the parts most worth having. Dario's smile was soft in the lamplight. We learned that the hard way. We sat together as night deepened, making plans for a future we'd almost lost. The road ahead wouldn't be simple, merging our worlds, balancing his responsibilities with my career, navigating the constant undercurrent of danger that came with his name. But sitting there, wearing his ring, planning our wedding, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Real, solid hope that this time, we'd get our forever. And when Dario carried me upstairs hours later, when we made love with the desperate intensity of people who'd almost lost each other permanently, when I fell asleep in his arms knowing he'd be there when I woke, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the easy choice, but the choice that made me feel most alive, the choice to love him, complications and all, with my eyes wide open and my heart unguarded. And in his world of shadows and violence, that choice was the most dangerous and beautiful thing I'd ever done. If you felt something while watching, please subscribe. That's how I know these stories mean something to you, even on your TV. Take a second to join our community of story lovers. Your support keeps this world of emotions alive.